Hello, this is In-Jin Yoon, professor in the Department of Sociology in Korea University. I'd like to present on trends of international migration and issues of migrant integration in Korea. In my presentation, I would like to examine the trends of international migration, the current status of migrant integration and migrant acceptance, and finally, I will explain the reasons for the low level of migrant integration in Korea. These two graphs show the opposite directions of Korean emigration and immigration in the last 3 decades. As a result of this trend, Korea has become an immigrant receiving country from the early 1990s. The number of foreign residents has continued to increase, and now they number about 2 million, accounting for 3.8% of the Korean population in 2021. If we classify foreign residents according to their status of residence, the largest group is ethnic Koreans with foreign nationality. They are overseas Koreans who returned to Korea for employment, education, and retirement. The next largest group is low-skilled migrant workers, while the number of professional workers has been low. The third largest group is marriage migrants. Now they are overtaken by international students. International marriage began to increase in 2000 and has peaked in 2005 and then slowly declined since then. Nowadays, every year, 10,000 international marriages occur, mainly between Korean men and foreign women. The number of marriage migrants increased rapidly in the early 2000s, but it has been steadily increasing since 2010. The number of children with a migration background has continued to increase. Their number is around 270,000. The number of international students has continued to increase, and even the COVID-19 did not stop the growing trend. If we classify foreign residents by nationality, the majority is the Chinese, and among them, Korean Chinese are the absolute majority. Their number is estimated to be 800,000. If we look more closely at ethnic Koreans with foreign nationality, their number has continued to increase since 2006, and the majority of them are Korean Chinese, followed by Americans and Canadians. Ethnic Koreans could become the majority of foreign residents due to the Korean government's immigration policy favoring ethnic Koreans over non-ethnic foreigners. For example, overseas Koreans visa, F4 visa, and working visit visa, H2 visa, allow ethnic Koreans to enter and work in Korea more freely than non-ethnic foreigners. The Korean government has shown favoritism to overseas Koreans, but has formally closed its door to refugees. The number of asylum seekers has increased before the COVID-19, but the refugee approval rate has remained at 3%. One important change in the status of foreign residents is an increasing trend toward permanent residence. Since 2015, the number and proportion of permanent residents exceeded the number and proportion of temporary employment migrants. It signals that Korea is now entering the stage of immigration country. If we compare the sojourn type of foreign residents between 2010 and 2021, the proportion of naturalized persons increased from 8% to 10%, while the proportion of foreign residents without Korean citizenship decreased from 81% to 77%. We can summarize the above-mentioned trends of immigration in Korea as follows. First, the number of migrants has grown, but the majority of them are ethnic Koreans. In the 1990s through 2000s, most migrants were short-term, low-skilled foreign workers, but since 2015, the number of permanent residents has surpassed the short-term employment migrants. The number of naturalized foreign residents, children of foreign residents, international students, and other foreigners has increased, while the number of foreign workers has decreased. Overseas Koreans, foreign workers, and marriage migrants are acquiring Korean citizenship, transforming from sojourners to settlers. The number of refugees and the refugee approval rate are very low, and religious minorities such as Muslims are very few and invisible. Overall, although immigration has increased, racial and cultural diversity has not increased to the same extent, making Korea an immigration country with little multiculturalism. I define migrant integration as a state in which migrants become full members of the host society. I divide migrant integration into three dimensions: systematic integration, psychological integration, and multicultural acceptance. I revised the original model of migrant integration proposed by Ager and Strang by adding political participation and psychology and culture as new markers. In my study, I had three dimensions of migrant integration, as I mentioned earlier. I have separate indicators to measure the level of migrant integration. I used multiple data to examine the level of migrant integration. First, I will examine the level of systematic integration. In 2020, the employment rate of foreign residents was 63.7%, higher than that of naturalized persons and native Koreans. But the unemployment rate is higher among foreign residents than native Koreans. The income of foreign residents is significantly lower than that of natives. Compared to the Korean average, full-time workers earned only 76.9%. Foreign residents live in less stable housing conditions than native Koreans. Their income ownership rate is only 24% as compared to 60.6% of native Koreans. Most of them live on monthly rent, and 21.8% live in free of charging categories like dormitories provided by the company. If we look at the bar charts of the right, the overall level of subjective health is 4.1 out of 5, indicating good health. Only 6% experienced non-use of medical service, and 17.8% did not have health insurance. This graph shows the subscription rates of foreign residents in four major insurance. In health insurance, 80% of migrants have health insurance. The political participation of foreign residents is low. In the 2019 survey of foreign residents in Korea, less than half participated in election. The degree of discrimination experienced by foreign residents is high. About 20% experienced discrimination, but only 16.7% demanded correction of discrimination. So many responded to discrimination experience passively and helplessly. As an indicator of psychological indication, we used a sense of belonging. The sense of belonging to Korean society was 3.7% out of 5, which was higher than the average. The sense of belonging to the local community was at a lower level than the Korean society. The Migration Research and Training Center, a Korean government-funded Migration Research Institute, calculated the Migrant Integration Index by considering the previously reviewed indicators. The graph shows that professionals, naturalized persons, and permanent residents scored 70 out of 100 points. Among the various groups, non-professionals showed the lowest level of integration. However, all groups showed an integration level of 68 points or higher, indicating that the difference between the groups was not large. However, because the MRTC did not provide a baseline against which to assess whether the level of integration is high or low, it is difficult to judge whether each group of immigrants is well integrated or not. Multicultural acceptance is an important condition for a multicultural society. It is defined as a degree to which people accept other people of different racial and cultural backgrounds as members of society. The Korean government conducts a multicultural acceptance survey every 3 years. The multicultural acceptance score increased from 2012 to 2015 and declined afterward, indicating that Koreans have become less open and tolerant toward foreigners and migrants. They have also become less supportive of government policies supporting immigrants and minorities. Koreans' rejection of refugees and Muslims were evidenced in the Yemeni refugee crisis in Jeju in 2018 and the recent protest against the construction of a mosque in Daegu. Roughly, Koreans' perceptions and attitudes toward immigrants and minorities have changed from sympathy in the 1990s to apathy in 2010s and to hatred in 2020s. Migrant workers and married migrant women were perceived socially disadvantaged who needed protection and care, but nowadays they are often regarded as competitors, criminals, and economic burdens. The term multicultural is now seen as social stigma. Combining the survey results reviewed above, I calculated the overall level of migrant integration. The overall level is 2.5 points out of 5, which is less than the average level of 3. The integration level of naturalized residents was 2.88, higher than the average of married migrants and all immigrants. Even though the naturalized persons have a higher level of integration than all migrants and married migrants, still their integration level is below the average. In several indicators of integration, the experience of discrimination scored the lowest, lowering the overall level of integration. The above results match the results of my own survey of migrant workers and married migrant women in the Seoul metropolitan area. The overall level of migrant workers and married migrant women was equally 2.5 below the average level of integration. This result confirms that both migrant workers and married migrant women are not well integrated materially, institutionally, and mentally in Korean society. I explained the reasons for the low level of migrant integration in Korea from the perspectives of migrants, natives, and the government. From the migrant side, they have short period of immigration and settlement, and they do not have a solid foundation for social integration, such as permanent residency and citizenship. From the native side, they do not recognize migrants as members of society with equal rights and discriminate against and exclude them from the opportunity structure and social relations. From the government side, the government and politicians are reluctant to implement active migrant integration policies such as anti-discrimination law to protect the rights and status migrants because the general public is concerned about immigration increase. Thank you for listening to my presentation.